Stuck on you, got this feeling down deep in my soul, man, I just can't lose.
For more than 5 decades, Lionel Richie has been one of the warmest, most recognizable voices in popular music. His songs have soundtracked weddings, breakups, reunions, and quiet nights for generations of listeners, and his name has become synonymous with a certain kind of old-fashioned romance. Yet for a man who built an entire career singing about love, Richie's own love life has been anything but simple. He has walked down the aisle twice, weathered public scandal, survived a bruising divorce, and raised 3 children who each grew into their own kind of fame. Now, at 74, the singer has settled into a relationship that friends and family describe as the calmest and most grounded of his life, and in interviews over the years, he has all but confirmed what many fans suspected. This, finally, is the real thing. Today, we're looking back at the long and winding road that led Lionel Richie to the woman he now calls a person who makes his whole complicated world feel safe. To understand why this late-in-life love story means so much, it helps to remember just how far Richie has come. Long before he was a judge on American Idol or a fixture at award shows, he was a young saxophone player from Tuskegee, Alabama, who joined a group of college friends to form a funk and soul band called the Commodores. The band signed with Motown in the early 1970s and spent the decade building a loyal following, but it was Richie's gift for writing tender, melodic ballads that set the group apart from other funk acts of the era. Songs like Easy and 3 Times a Lady showcase a songwriter who understood how to turn simple, plain-spoken emotion into something universal. By the end of the decade, Richie was already being courted by other artists to write for them, and his crossover appeal was impossible to ignore. When Richie launched his solo career in the early 1980s, he became one of the defining pop voices of the decade. Hits such as Hello, All Night Long, Say You, Say Me, and his duet with Diana Ross, Endless Love, turned him into a global superstar whose warm baritone crossed genre lines with ease. He sold tens of millions of records, won multiple Grammy Awards, took home an Oscar and a Golden Globe for Say You, Say Me, and closed out the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics in front of a television audience estimated in the billions. Later in life, he would receive the Library of Congress Gershwin Prize for Popular Song and a Kennedy Center honor, cementing his place as one of the most decorated songwriters of his generation. But even as a professional life soared, Richie has been candid about how difficult it was to build the same kind of stability at home. Richie's first marriage began in 1975, when he wed his college sweetheart, Brenda Harvey. The two had met years earlier at Tuskegee University, where Richie was studying and performing with the Commodores, and their relationship grew alongside his rising career. For much of the next 2 decades, the marriage appeared to be a steady, loving partnership. In the early 1980s, Richie and Harvey took in a young girl named Nicole, the daughter of a bandmate who was struggling to provide for her, and the couple would go on to legally adopt her when she was 9 years old. To the outside world, the Richies looked like a picture of stability, a chart-topping husband, a supportive wife, and a growing family. Behind closed doors, however, the marriage was quietly falling apart. By the early 1990s, reports surfaced that Richie had become involved with a dancer named Diane Alexander, who had appeared in the music video for his 1986 hit, Dancing on the Ceiling. When Brenda Harvey discovered the affair, the fallout was explosive and very public. According to reporting from the Los Angeles Times, Harvey confronted Alexander at her home, and the encounter escalated into a physical altercation serious enough that police were called to the scene. Harvey was arrested and charged with several offenses, including corporal injury to a spouse, resisting arrest, trespassing, and disturbing the peace. She was released the next morning after posting bail. It was a painful, very public unraveling for a couple who had spent nearly 2 decades building a life together, and by August of 1993, the marriage had officially ended. Rather than walking away from the relationship that had caused so much upheaval, Richie went on to marry Diane Alexander in December of 1995. By then, the couple already shared 2 children, son Miles, born in 1994, and daughter Sophia, born in 1998. For a few years, it seemed as though Richie had found a more lasting version of domestic life, but this second marriage would also prove unable to withstand the pressures of fame, distance, and diverging priorities. The couple divorced in 2004, reportedly following a long and complicated split. According to Divorce magazine, Alexander sought a substantial monthly sum in child and spousal support, citing the extravagant lifestyle the family had built together. Details about the current relationship between Richie and his second ex-wife remain scarce, and the two have largely kept their post-divorce lives private. Beyond his 2 marriages, Richie has been linked to a handful of other relationships over the years, though most were brief and drew far less attention than his marriages. In the early 1990s, he was romantically connected to actress Dawn Maxey, and has also been mentioned in connection with a songwriter named Cynthia, though little is publicly known about the nature or length of either relationship. Years later, in 2009, he was spotted on what appeared to be a dinner date with Chinese actress Bai Ling at a restaurant in Santa Monica, an outing that briefly stirred tabloid speculation, but never developed into anything more serious. None of these connections, fleeting as they were, seemed to be what Richie was truly looking for. In interviews with People magazine, he has described himself candidly as a hopeless romantic who has lived through, in his own words, the ups and downs and the ins and outs of love. Someone who kept believing in the possibility of a lasting partnership even after 2 marriages had ended. That belief was finally rewarded in 2014, when Richie met Lisa Parigi at a dinner party in Los Angeles. Parigi, who was still based in Switzerland at the time, had only been invited to the gathering at the last minute during a trip to the city, and it was mutual friends who introduced her to Richie that evening. By most accounts, the connection between them was immediate. Parigi has since recalled that their very first conversation stretched across the entire night, touching on nearly every subject imaginable, and that the ease of it surprised her. It was a kind of instant unforced rapport that neither of them expected to find at a casual dinner party, and it set the tone for a relationship that has now lasted more than a decade. The age gap between the two, roughly 40 years, has occasionally drawn attention and commentary from the public, but those close to the couple say it has done little to shake their bond. In multiple interviews, Richie has spoken about Parigi with an openness that stands out from how he discussed either of his marriages. He has described her as strikingly beautiful, but has been careful to emphasize that what matters most to him is her intelligence and the way she helps him navigate the chaos of his public life. In one especially telling comment to People magazine, Richie reflected on reaching a stage of life where a person can easily grow jaded about love, only to find that Parigi has a way of making everything feel steady and safe again. For a man who spent decades in the spotlight and 2 marriages searching for exactly that kind of stability, the remark carried real weight. Lisa Parigi is far more than simply the woman on Lionel Richie's arm at award shows, however. Born in Switzerland to a family of Caribbean, Swiss, and Chinese heritage, she grew up fluent in multiple languages and has spoken openly about never quite loving her home country's climate, joking that the constant rain and snow left her longing for sunshine long before she ever considered a life in Los Angeles. Before stepping into the public eye, Parigi built a career in the corporate technology sector, working for companies based in Geneva and Zurich, a background that stands in sharp contrast to the entertainment world she eventually found herself part of. She later moved into modeling and eventually launched her own ventures, founding a luxury lifestyle brand called Estate Collection and a skincare line named Glow Up Beauty. Her fragrance and candle collections draw inspiration from her travels, referencing destinations like Beverly Hills, the Swiss Alps, and St. Tropez, while her skincare products are marketed as vegan, cruelty-free, and free of parabens and sulfates. It is a career built entirely on her own terms, and one that predates and exists independently of her relationship with Richie. Despite Richie's global fame, Parigi has managed to carve out a public identity of her own, and by all appearances, she has embraced her role within his extended family rather than simply standing beside him at events. She has developed a particularly warm relationship with Richie's youngest daughter, Sophia, frequently marking her birthdays and milestones with affectionate posts, and she has also spent time with Richie's other children, Nicole and Miles, suggesting she has become a genuine part of the family's inner circle rather than a peripheral figure. When Sophia married music executive Elliot Grange in a ceremony in the south of France in the spring of 2023, Parigi was there celebrating alongside the rest of the family, having also attended Sophia's bridal shower in the months leading up to the wedding. The couple has been photographed together at some of the more meaningful moments of Richie's later career as well, including his 2017 Kennedy Center Honor Ceremony in Washington, D.C., and a private audience with Pope Francis at the Vatican in December 2019, an experience Parigi later described on social media as a genuinely moving one. For all the glamour surrounding their relationship, friends of the couple often point to something much simpler as the reason it has lasted: an easy domestic rhythm built around ordinary life rather than red carpets. The couple shares a dog named Sylvester, who has developed something of following of his own thanks to a dedicated social media presence. And Richie has spoken about the relationship in terms that sound less like a celebrity romance and more like a long-sought sense of peace. When he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2022, Richie used part of his acceptance speech to thank his family by name, closing with a brief, direct acknowledgement of Parigi as the person closest to his heart. It was a small moment, easy to miss amid a night full of tributes to his musical career. But for longtime fans who had watched him search for stability for decades, it landed as something close to confirmation. None of this is to say Richie's personal life has been without hardship in recent years, even with Parigi by his side. At the height of his solo career in the 1980s, he battled mysterious and frightening throat ailment that required 4 separate surgeries, each one carrying the risk that his singing voice, and with it his entire identity as an artist, might never fully return. He has described that period candidly as one of the closest he ever came to a genuine nervous breakdown, compounded at the time by his crumbling first marriage and the death of his father, Lionel Richie Sr., in 1990. Richie has recalled a chance encounter in Jamaica during that difficult stretch, when an older man approached him and told him, in essence, that his survival mattered to people who saw him as proof that they, too, could make it through their own hardships. Richie has said the moment moved him to tears and stayed with him long after. Richie has also spoken candidly, particularly during Black History Month interviews, about the scrutiny he faced early in his solo career over the kind of music he chose to make. Having grown up in a historically significant Black community surrounding Tuskegee University, surrounded by pioneering figures in music, aviation, and academia, Richie has said he was startled the first time critics suggested his pop ballads weren't authentically reflective of his race, questioning why a Black artist was writing what they dismissively called a waltz. He has said the criticism cut deeper than most people realize, precisely because of how proud he was of the community that raised him. His response, by his own account, was to reject the idea that he needed to be confined to any single lane of music, choosing instead to aim simply to be recognized as one of the greatest songwriters of his era, regardless of genre, who happened to be Black. Decades and tens of millions of records later, with a Gershwin Prize and a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nomination to his name, Richie has said he considers that goal not just met, but exceeded many times over. If his musical legacy is one pillar of Richie's life story, his role as a father is very much the other, and it is a role he has approached with the same mix of warmth and humor that defines his public persona. His eldest child, Nicole Richie, was born in 1981, family friends who were struggling financially, and Richie and Brenda Harvey took her in as a toddler before formally adopting her when she was 9. Richie has spoken about promising a young Nicole that he wasn't going anywhere, a pledge inspired in part by how much instability she had already experienced in her early life, and he later channeled that same protective love into his 1986 ballad Ballerina Girl, written for her. Nicole would go on to become a genuine pop culture figure in her own right, first through a role on the reality series A Simple Life, alongside Paris Hilton, and later by rebuilding her public image, following a period of personal struggles that included legal trouble and addiction. She has since become a best-selling author, a successful fashion designer through her label House of Harlow, and mother of 2 alongside her husband, Good Charlotte frontman Joel Madden. Richie has joked good-naturedly about surviving her more turbulent years, but has also expressed genuine pride in the woman she has become, crediting her with turning her life around entirely on her own terms. Richie's son, Miles, born in 1994 to Richie and Diane Alexander, grew up largely outside the spotlight compared to his older sister, primarily living with his mother following his parents' 2004 divorce. He has described his upbringing as notably private and himself as shy by nature, though he eventually stepped into modeling, making his runway debut during New York Fashion Week in 2018. Miles has spoken about the particular pressure of being seen as more than simply the son of famous parents, saying he wanted to be liked for who he is rather than for his family name. His path has not been without controversy. In 2019, he was reportedly involved in an incident at London's Heathrow Airport that led to police caution, though he was not formally convicted of any crime under UK law. Richie's youngest child, Sophia, born in 1998, has followed